Here we are, finally, with number 6 of the Thunderfrog. Okay, well, our final commentary track of issue 6. So it basically picks up exactly where the last one left off, in the middle of the action sequence, though there is kind of a funny story to go along with this one, which I discussed many times in other, well, whatever. Basically, this page, when it first arrived, we had one of those situations where the artist was definitely like in the zone and like kind of tunnel visioning it, and there was something on the page that made it look like something else was happening than a fight. The turtle character was much smaller, and his head was basically covering the groin space of the mastodon, which we never see anything anyways because of all the hair. But it kind of made it look like he was not fighting and having something less wholesome, and it didn't work. It was like this happened a couple times with Tayson, where he's just so close to it that doesn't really see, like, oh, maybe that looks a little dirty, and so the solution was very simple. We just cut out Hadron, enlarge him, make it look like he's further away, and boom. And it was great because we didn't have to redraw the page at all, because this is a wonderfully drawn page, and there's actually, if you look in the graphic novel in the concept art section, there is an early version of this page with a little more information that you can look at, see kind of like how it compares. Unfortunately, because it's supposed to be family friendly, we're not showing the offending page.
Right.
But it was an odd problem to have. But this looks so cool because there's more soldiers coming in. The big mastodon guy, he's full of arrows, which I guess where'd the arrow come from? But he's clearly been in a fight, and he's continuing. I love it. These guys have just nothing but energy. And then as it continues on, Hadron moves in and just finishes him off, and then is surrounded by even more soldiers. And I like it because it's just like, this guy's a badass, but there's just too many of them.
Right. I do have to say it's quite interesting of seeing a character that seems like he should be so much more bulkier, so much more just pure strength, but he has a great level of agility. Well, and the way that Tayson illustrates it, with the way that he jumps, the way that he's just able to swing such, but even with that, getting knocked out.
Well, he's very fast, he's very strong, very powerful, but this guy is not a stealthy person.
Right.
He is just going to wade in and just mess people up. He's, he has no problem he's not going to back down from a fight very easily. Here's an interesting point. I don't know if there's any necessarily a right or wrong answer in this, but it's one of those things that I think shows where I've matured as a letterer, because you have this, like the way some of the word balloons had to be tucked into corners a lot, and I feel like I should have structured the balloons a little differently. But you have this response that Hadron has where he is. I don't put two sentences in a word balloon. And I did here, and I'm looking at it, and it would have structured a lot better if I had broken it up. And I could fix it, but it's kind of like there's a point where you just have to call it a day and keep going.
Yeah, understandable on that.
You need to just, maybe when we color it, I might look at little details like that. But right now, I just got to get the book to the printer. And then so they're about to execute him. And all of a sudden, Theo, with his super jumping abilities, comes in with Martus's two swords, spears this officer, kills him, and it's like goes for the hammer. Gets it back, and then Haran shows up, rolling it. It's kind of funny because you see her. She basically turtles up and turns into that little ball that armadillos can do. Rolls down the hill, plows into some guy that was about to kill Theo. And she comes up and is completely not dizzy. It's looking at that, it's like, shouldn't she be, But and then of course you have sniper support on the hill with through my mouse with Helene and Quad, busting out their archery, and they're about to they have to decide what to do with Martus, and Quad's basic response is you know what? Just get you. You're a pussy. We don't have to deal with you. We're you can either help us or bail. At this point, I don't care. And that's another one of those moments where Martis has a chance to choose honor or his own life, and he picks honor, and I like it. It's a good character moment for him to kind of redeem himself, but wow, Tayson kind of overdid his jumping just a little bit. He's gonna be dead. Oh my goodness. You ever notice also that Helene's scarf is always blowing somewhere? It's like there's no
She
wind.
has a cinematic scarf.
Right, yeah.
It's a magical item, really.
Yeah, because like in Gamers 2, when we were watching that movie, it's like in the if you listen to, I didn't notice this at first, but when you listen to the commentary tracks, they talk about how like the female sorceress, there's always wind blowing her hair,
Anyways, we should continue with
Yes, of course. So so Martis gets down there, pulls his sword out of the dead body, and just continues on, and now we've got the hammer again. Everybody's fighting.
Though I gotta say, it's like I do love the fact of, he is actually pulling his own weight, and he is actually helping.
Well, he kind of has to.
Right. But I mean, thinking about like one of the scenes right here, he boot to the head one of the archers, and it actually helps Theo not get shot in the back with an arrow. So it's kind of that level of, if he didn't come and help,
well, there's too many people.
Right.
These guys are all capable enough, and Theo can do a lot of damage, but he is only focused on what's right in front of him because he's not experienced with this. There's too many enemy soldiers. There were only 3 of them down there fighting, and they weren't even really coordinated. Yeah, I mean they wouldn't have lasted. And then he jumps in, but then you have this firing line of guys with those funny archery guns, and they are basically killing him. And our turtle jumps in the way, and uses his shell to protect Theo, and I like it because like the arrows went through his shell, and he's injured, and he's bleeding, and there's actually, if you look, I totally missed this before, but there's actually a little bit of blood spray, when he blocks it. It's very, very cool. And then Theo busts out the super blast to basically do some crowd control and nails everybody. And you don't really go into it here, but basically, like, the Allies knew what was about to happen because they'd seen this trick before, and so they basically hit the ground,
Yeah.
And it's funny too because like throughout the whole thing, Theo is basically can use the hammer. Like, it kind of responds to him intuitively, and that's just how it works. But like, his ability to use it and know what to do with it, it's kind of indicate like there's all these little cues that maybe he is the chosen one, because he also is smart and he realizes what he can do. Like, it isn't the fact that it just automatically works. He actually was bright enough to figure out what to do with the thing, probably more so than anyone else would have been.
I mean, like a good example is the bridge in the episode where
because he just knew, I'll try this
with the metal,
boom, and it worked, and he does it again, and of course the enemy soldiers were unprepared, and you can see the look on his friend's face. It's like, oh shit, duck, he's doing it, and you see this, and this is kind of where we're talking about last video. They have this, Tayson has this great top-down view that shows like the damage to the ground, and there's just people on the ground, either dead or unconscious, dozens and dozens of them. And
the next panel I really love because it really illustrates his capability of showing emotion. Where you have the entire cast of characters, just that level of between amazement, shock,
their reactions,
just the reactions, and just thinking about it, like going back to the first book, the very first issue of just no dialogue, but at the same time, this is just that strong level of his capability of, visual storytelling.
Yeah. And you look at the scene, you're like, oh, we won, we're good. And it's like, nope. And Hadron immediately grabs Theo and just runs. And everybody,
as this rain of arrows start coming on down.
And then it's this important point, because it's like, they never run out of soldiers.
Yeah.
They're not going to. There's thousands of enemy.
Even with Theo just either killing or knocking unconscious all those other soldiers that were in the immediate area around them.
Yeah.
It's still the fact of, like within the previous book we were talking about, they had this encampment. They're an army.
Yeah.
So, it's a different thing of, here's a small group of heroes or individuals that are trying to basically do their task or their quest.
Yep.
And yet you have this large army that you're going up against.
Yep.
I mean, they're obviously able to survive, but at the same time, this is a stupid move would really have wrecked their day.
Yeah, and they did. It's kind of like they had to get down there and they had to get the hammer back, because it would be way worse in the hands of the enemy.
Right.
Especially if they can make it work somehow. And you just got to get away, because there's this is not a fight you can win. But again, and then on the next page they have to like escape, and like blast their way past the sentries. And I just realized something, that it's kind of funny. Why is there a gate? All these years later, I only just now realized there's a gate. Why is there
maybe it was within the area that they set camp at.
Well, they could have established like picket lines or something, like put up something, but it's just like, why is there a gate there? Anyways, but it's a cool dramatic moment, because Theo basically blasts the right way past the sentries, and then but then you have this thing where you see like you basically make the discovery that Martis couldn't get away. He got surrounded. There were, like, everybody else could escape. He wasn't able to. Theo is basically like, no, I don't want to leave you, because he's the good guy, And then the look on Martis's face is like, you son of a bitch, And he's like, that, no good deed goes unpunished,
Yep.
And then he's surrounded, and he's like, let's do it. I'm gonna die. You know what? Never mind. And he's like, I give up, and he just. And you can see like the destruction a bit in that area, but still looking at the scene, like there are tents around, like we probably should have had more soldiers in the scene, actually. Maybe that's something we can do later, but like you see him surrounded by. Yeah,
actually looking at it,
there's only 3 people. There were 4 over here. Yeah, that's one of those things where it does feel a little light, but
it's still not bad. But I mean, it gets part of the idea, but it isn't as.
Well, but it also kind of makes some sense too, because like, okay, maybe there have been 4 guys, but the guy could have moved on. They are obviously they're soldiers pursuing the hammer, because they need to get it back.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ways that this could be interpreted. But yeah, there probably should be more people. But whatever. Gets the point across. He's been captured, and then eventually they get away. We don't really see how, but we know that they did. And then the end of the issue basically focuses on establishing, okay, well, yes, Hadron's like, I'm not your enemy. I stole the hammer, but
in fairness, it's like,
and do we trust you? Like I saved him, sort of. Anyways, they basically have their conversation where it's established that like Theo needs training,
right?
And Hadron basically agrees to come in, join the party, and take the place of Martis. But instead of being a problem, he becomes a help. And there's actually kind of a fun thing. Like there's a sequence where Tayson has Quad standing there touching Theo's shoulder. Haran's next to him, and they got a split down the middle of the panel. It's a weird scene. You didn't have to do it that way, but in the original one,
it also gives kind of a feeling of a sequence of time.
That is true.
And I mean that kind of goes into like as comic book making, of sometimes it's even though the scene could have easily just been like a full panel, where instead of having it the break right down the center, you would have had the flow of time would have been different.
That's
and
true.
With the way that this feels is almost like a camera angle of panning from one side, going into this is what's being said, and then panning over to this other scene of the camera where you have the split, him in the middle, and then the 2 characters talking. And then just enough of that time going on by.
Well, one of the funny things with this scene, though, is
Yeah.
when he drew it. So, as we probably have noticed up till now, Theo tends to stash the hammer behind his head with his backpack. Well, the hammer was only present in one of those panels originally, and so we had to send it back to Tayson. He's like, he had this little oh wow moment, because it's funny, you're so close to it sometimes. Again,
Right.
like you don't see some of these things all the time, but I like this one. The next page where you've got kind of like the staggered thing. I'm trying to remember how it was originally laid out because I think that I may have had to monkey with that one to get it to work right. But it was one of those pages where I was really happy with this because I sometimes overdo the dialogue when I write a script. And in your mind, it seems like it would fit, and you can see how it would fit in your head, and then the artist delivers it, and then like it doesn't fit, and it could have, but it didn't. And in those cases, I have to go through and I have to change the dialogue, and tighten it up, and I think most of the time it ends up being better when I tighten it up. But there are some pages where this is an important page, and we really got to get this exposition out because this is the character's monologue moment, and it establishes key points in the story, and this we have to make space. And this is one of those pages, and I love it because it establishes Hadron in this case is basically establishing to a degree that Martis is correct, that Theo shouldn't actually be the chosen one because he is it's like he's not mentally prepared for the job, right? And that if he doesn't wise up, he's going to die. So it's kind of
that level of, it was so easy for Martis to take the weapon away from him and all these various other stuff. And you got individuals that they have the combat level of veteran, capability where they could go in and just wipe the floor with it just being a hammer. But it's like, yes, you're lucky enough that you can actually activate the full potential of this artifact and, call forth lightning. But at the same time, you have no discipline, you have no technique, you have no style, and
see, Martis' whole perspective as a character is like, well, you're worthless. Where do you get off? And Hadron's perspective is you're not worthless. You're a good man. So obviously, in that regard, there's some worthiness in you. But the problem is that if you don't...
You're unmolded clay because you don't know how to actually...
If you don't wise up, if you don't get battle hardened, you will die. And if you're a chosen one and you don't get with the program, how does that help anyone?
Right.
Because you're supposed to go out and do whatever it is you're meant to do. But if you die tomorrow because you're just not mentally prepared for what you have to do, we're all screwed. Like that like, you're the hero. You have to assume that identity, right? And that's like that's an important point. And there's another characterization point where like Quad got too comfortable with standing up for Theo, and Theo's like, you know what? I think I can speak for myself, and he does, and he's like, he's prepared to be the hero. He just doesn't know what to do. He's not like all of these people have had formative experiences that make them prepared for that role, for the role of either fighting with him or protecting him or being his ally, but he hasn't, and this is a great sequence because it's like it establishes like there's a characterization point, and it basically forms Theo as the hero, and it's the point where he accepts the role, and he realizes that he is going to die doing this. Like, he's not going to make it, but he's willing to do it, and so like somebody has to agree to be his teacher, and that's where Hadron steps in, and he says, okay, I'll do it. If you're going to survive, somebody has to teach you. I will be that guy. And they basically kind of come to an understanding. And Theo, and then we have the flappy scarf again. and then they basically shake hands, and that is that's where
their part of this.
That part of the arc. And then we come to the final scene in issue 6 where the enemy general. It's kind of funny. I should probably mention this. Like, so when we created that character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, here let me this is because he's kind of an extreme character, and what we were actually looking at was that he is and it's supposed to be a lion, okay? But I remember that this image from the Ninja Turtles RPG. I can find the picture here really quick. Let's see. Yeah, we were looking at this picture right here, right? And I was thinking that a porcupine would be a cool character to have, mm-hmm. but because like I love the look of this of this, like this is just God, that looks so cool, right? But and that was done by Eastman and Lier, by the way. They did most of the artwork in this thing. But what was interesting is like a lion kind of is a symbol, right? Like we see it as the king of the jungle, and it kind of makes sense that he might be the one who assumes the position of being in charge, and stylistically, like thematically, it's a symbol that the reader can identify with. They go, oh, this guy's in charge, right? It's like it creates kind of this thing that people automatically will recognize, but at the same time, good Lord, this guy looks so awesome, right? So we ended up kind of compromising in the middle, and Tayson gave this character shoulder spikes. And then he gave him this crazy spiky hairdo that was kind of reminiscent of the porcupine look, from this book. And so just one of those fun little development points in making the character. But it just ends with this ominous, the Buell, the name of the general. He comes in. I gave him all these guys weird names, and he's like, "It looks like we have a lot to discuss." And that's kind of like this ominous moment. And I love how they have him chained up. It's almost like he's in a pillory. But since you're reading this book, you more than likely have seen the actual ending by now, because when we did this, the plan was to include an epilogue sequence in the graphic novel. Let me just scroll through and find it here, because I wanted when you do a graphic novel. Frequently the trade paperbacks of these comic series, all it is just the exact same thing that you saw, when you bought the original book. So why would you want to get more? Like what's this graphic novel good for other than to have it on your shelf, right? And some people trade wait, where they wait till the graphic novel comes out, and then nobody buys the comic book, and then it gets canceled. So what we wanted was to have a little bit of an epilogue sequence at the end for the people that actually took the time to buy the book, so they get a little bit more, right? They get the actual ending that you only get if you get the graphic novel. And so we have this sequence here where Martis is being taken off into another tent, and we find out that the name of the general, and he they got the thing. It was like, I only get my name rank and slur number part, and he cuts Martis free, and Martis is like, I will not betray my people. It's like, we'll see. And he stabs the knife into the table and leaves him there by himself. And Martis looks at the knife, and suddenly the mysterious demon guy is in the room with him again. And it says, seems that you and I have much to discuss. And Martis is standing there holding the dagger, and then it pulls back to the scene of this creature looking at a globe that it is holding, and it has a picture of Martis and the demon guy in there, and the demon guy has a voice coming out of the globe that says, you won't need the weapon. And if you look back, there's other globes behind it that show off scenes that had occurred elsewhere in the course of the story, and it's got like a raven on its shoulder. Now what's interesting is that this sequence, we're not using this page, the one that you and I are looking at right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen the new one, Alex. This is the one that everybody else is going to get, but they're going to get this one. So it doesn't have the raven on the shoulder, unfortunately. Oh. And it's going to be a whole...
It is much more cleaner.
Yeah. So it's going to be the same sequence.
There's certain aspects that I...
And we're talking about the one that you are able to look at right now in the book.
So the real difference is the one that was previously done in comparison to the one that's now going to be in the book is... this current one has much more of a feel of an owl.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is something just fantastically crazy about the way that Tayson did
The original one?
the original one.
Right. So
That just the way to put it is like it is very Tayson style.
Yeah,
I
and-
mean it is
yeah.
crazy Tayson style that just like works for what he does. But the current version does have a lot of attributes that are just easier to read
Well-
and take a look at.
and to explain this a little bit, ultimately, as we're having this discussion, I don't know if the old version is going to be in the book at all. Right? It may, but it really comes down to page count.
Right.
Because if we have an even number page count,
Right.
it won't be going in. If we have an odd number page count, then it has to go in.
Right.
But the thing about this is that this character, the implication is that this character has been spying on the party the whole time.
Oh, okay,
Right?
yeah.
And we also see a kind of a foreshadowing of a creature that will be appearing in the next graphic novel, and that it has also been spying on. So we got all these key moments in the story that if you look really close. But the thing is like this is a great sequence, and I'm looking at this, and basically I came back to Tayson after a little while, because I was sitting on this for a couple of years before we put with this page, and I looked at it and go, okay, so this character is actually appearing in the second graphic novel. As we have this recording, it has already appeared. This character has already appeared and is in chapter 7, which you can see online at thunderfrog.com. But so the deal is I know it's TF Comp, whatever case. Go to the Miniature Dragon website. You'll find the links. So anyhow, you will. This character is going to be a main character in the story, which will be established by the end of the second graphic novel. But I went to Tayson and I go, this is going to be insane to draw this later on.
Oh, you know what this kind of reminds me of? What was that book that we reviewed? Crisis on Infinite Worlds?
I don't think we did Crisis on Infinite Earths. We would have done a different one, because that's...
No, we did.
Crisis on
The
Did
one
we?
where...
Crisis on Infinite Earths is the original one, that the 12-volume one from
the
DC.
one with
where
the
they-
anti-monitor?
Yeah, but I don't
Didn't
think
we?
I don't think we
Oh,
reviewed it.
maybe I just reviewed it myself.
We-
or
we-
like...
We may have talked
Anyways,
about it with
but,
Keenan.
yes.
yes.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so to bring on that attribute, one of the characters in there is known as the anti-monitor. And...
Oh yeah. The
if you've ever seen that book, there's a scene that that really reminds me of this. So this reminds me of like how initially you see the anti-monitor, this older version that myself and Woody are looking at right now.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of activity going on, and a lot of things that you have to illustrate if you want to do the character again.
Yeah.
And in that book, in the DC book,
With the
they
anti-monitor.
refine the anti-monitor and take off a lot of the details.
Right, because
and
it's
makes
a
me
lot to draw.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's one of those things that, like, initially when we were checking out that book, or maybe it was just me checking out that book, but yeah, either way, it's like it has been always one of those things in the back of my mind, when doing comic books, animation, or any kind of artwork. Do I need to redraw this character? Do I need to, touch this thing again? And there is that kind of level of, yes, you want to simplify certain things, but you want to give certain levels of detail.
Right.
But there are ways to basically indicate, okay, the drawing that we're taking a look has all these feathers, and what a pain in the butt to replicate that every single time and get that nice consistent look.
And it also doesn't
you can
really-
do it, but at the same time, you'd be spending a considerable amount of time on it.
Yeah, and it also doesn't really look that much like an owl, in
Yeah,
the original version. And
his the current version, the one that's going to be printed, definitely has much more of an owl look to it. And also just seeing how much he's grown.
Yeah.
In style and capability.
Well, there's also another point as well, is that one of the bits of advice I was originally given by this guy who was basically he was doing an art class, and the guy is now a pretty successful comic book artist, but I knew him before he was in the business. But one of the things that he had told me was that when you're drawing a page, the part that has the most detail on it is the part that you want people to focus on the most, and that you go less detail on other areas because it tends to pull attention towards the part that's actually important to the scene. And so you wouldn't go with crazy detail on the walls and the brickwork and the backgrounds. And you see these comic books where guys go with crazy detail on everything, and sometimes you just get lost in it. And,
well, I think like
and,
our previous video that we were talking about, where we take mention to Ninja Turtles,
yeah,
the part of the inspiration to this whole thing, and the difference of the comics where they took the previous black and white fully nicely detailed stuff and then put color into it, and just how sometimes it got really muddy,
and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does.
Yeah,
Well, in this particular case, like the sequence looks really cool, but the problem you have is that, like, okay, so you're obviously going to be, your attention will obviously be drawn to the part where the dialogue is,
right?
But then you have the parts in the background that you're supposed to be seeing. Go, oh wow, he's been spying on them. But the fact is that the face is so complicated that it completely pulls your attention away from everything else. So all you're going to see is the dialogue in the face, and you kind of ignore the rest of it. And like I did it, I put that that stuff there. I know it's the focus, and I have trouble focusing on it. But then you look at the new one, which is kind of flipped in a way, but it's like this one, you don't have that problem. And it's kind of funny. There's aspects of the original one I like better because, like, I was looking at this and going, God, can we put the black background back? But he's flipped it where now the outfit is darker. And I think it has to be this way, actually, because of the way the new pages are being colored. But it's fine. I mean, it's still going to communicate well. There's no discontinuity. It's just that's just how this page is. But this new design is way simpler. It looks more like an owl. Looks more like the way the character's supposed to be, and it will be a hell of a lot easier to draw over time. And actually, this character is supposed to be female.
No.
This is one of those ideas where there's like, we have what's called sexual dimorphism, where males and females look different, and in the animal kingdom, it's rarely, like
some species are very apparent. I mean, like peacocks are very apparent. I mean,
but
then you got like others where what are they, arias?
Well,
like certain type of parrots where unless
owls,
you do pretty much a DNA test.
Yeah, and like owls are very similar. A lot of the great cats, or just not great, like just regular cat creatures, canines, and bears. Like you can't physically tell the difference. And the idea was with this character is like, this character is female, but you wouldn't necessarily know because owls they don't necessarily. I mean, they're owls. Anyways, it's
there's an appropriate joke that could make about it, but let's keep on going.
Anyways, so we finally hit the end. This is a book that I have been working on for a while, and we're now finally doing chapter 7. So I guess in a couple of years we'll be hopefully doing another set of these things.
Yeah.
Though we're releasing it bi-weekly, so I don't know how long that's going to take. But I do have an ending in mind, and I know how far I want to take the series, and it's like the only thing that would make me want to stop making it is if Tayson wanted to quit.
Right.
If he didn't want to do it, and I'm not sure I'd want to keep going without him because it's like, he is the Thunderfrog.
Right. I mean, it's like within various properties, between like what we've worked on and stuff that we reviewed, there's obviously times where certain projects you get multiple hands within the pot, and then there's other stuff that does become very iconic. To
well, like Cyber Symbiosis here, I've had other artists help with the project at times, and
it's been really interesting to see, like, all the various different styles that have come up. Tayson has done a shot at it. Harrison,
we've even had fan art.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is like, I love Eric's art, and I don't necessarily want to lose it, but I don't expect him to be there for the full run of the series.
No, I get it. I mean, it's like as careers change and such. Yeah. But I mean, there is that kind of level of different kind of feel too. I mean, originally, not to go into major things with Cyber Symbiosis, but Claire was one of the initial people that was going to do the book.
Good friend
and
of ours.
then we got lucky in finding Eric.
Well, she just it was there was just
bad timing. Yeah, anyways,
wasn't available, and we did have to find somebody, and we found a guy who is delivering pretty high quality work.
But that is a video for another time. We should probably wrap on up.
So, do you have any final thoughts on this whole process? Because you haven't been necessarily invested in as much as me, but you certainly were, pretty much like
a lot of behind the scenes kind of stuff.
I mean, like there was a lot of things where you kind of have this thing where you get called in to swoop in and save the day, when things are going rough. And for the most part, I was able to kind of cruise on this thing, without too much help or interference. But there were some moments, we're definitely going to be having you come in to help with coloring when we finally get this first graphic novel colored.
It's got to say, it's like out of the various individuals that I've done such with, it's like. I imagine same with you. It's like Tayson has been a wonder to work with, and it's and to give him more praise than probably should. It's like
give him plenty.
It's
build
like
up that ego.
No, I'm really looking forward to helping within this mythos, helping within the story, helping within the part of contributing to the bigger part of the entire thing. And it's like, it's such a pleasure working with not only you, but with like him, of this story that it's like, in that one part, like I think I've said in one of the videos, where I want to be surprised, but yet because I'm working on it, I have to know a certain aspect.
Yeah.
And I kind of have that like, no. Don't say anything, Woody. I want to read it for myself, but at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, I know these aspects of these characters, and then it becomes that level of, I can't talk about it because there's books that we get to see that are in these different levels of development, and then it becomes, I don't want to spoil it for others because there is a certain level of like that enjoyment of like, oh wow, that first time I think is always amazing.
Well, like with Cyber Symbiosis, Luke, a friend of ours, he really likes the series, and he one of the characters that's in actually the first issue in the background is actually one of his characters.
Yeah, the dwarf, right?
Yeah, the dwarf with the arms.
Yeah. The cybernetic arms.
It's based on one of his characters who's going to be who will get a more prominent role later on in the series, but that one's definitely conceived as more of an anthology book, but doesn't
that kind of go into that level of he's got a certain level of detail and knowledge, but at the same time he kind of wants to see it.
Well, he doesn't know what I'm going to do with the character ultimately, but the thing is that Luke loves Cyber Symbiosis, but he has a hard time reading it, a page at a time. Because it's like it's being put together like a regular comic book, but each page isn't necessarily a standalone page. It's just the next part of the story. And he gets very excited when each issue finishes because I get to go read it. So, I could see Thunderfrog being that way for you. It's like you'll work on I get a page. I don't know what's going on here, but I've got to do this thing, and then finally it's all done. You're like, oh, I get to read it.
Yes.
Yeah. And boy, we got some interesting things coming up for part 2. Let me tell you.
So, we should probably wrap on up, but I definitely want to say thank you for watching our little mini series.
If you've made it this far,
yes,
and there may be a few other videos in there too. Hopefully, we get one from Tayson. Because I'd love to.
Oh, that would be
love to give him a chance to add in. Otherwise, I'll have to wait till we put it out in color, which will probably be at least another year. So maybe 2. We'll see how it goes. It took me a lot longer than I thought it would to get this graphic novel done.
Well, but even going back into some of our previous conversations of like talking about going to conventions, going at it, it's sticking with it. It's like, there have been a lot of individuals where I go like, wow, you got an amazing level of talent, and that kind of joking level of like, I think all of us do, of like, I'm just going to give up, since you're in the circle.
Well, that's the thing, is 3/4
amazingly
of the
lot
people,
of those people were,
like when you go to a show, we kind of were talking about this in our first video this morning, but like you go to a show, you see all these great indie books, all these new people entering the market, and 3/4 of them will not be at the show next year.
And it's amazing. Like, there are people where it's like, you know, hey, let me do this doodle and the Mona Lisa, or like this thing that looks like a photograph that they were able to pull out
Well,
of their imagination.
I think I think it's like people, they see this stuff going on, they go, oh, that looks like great, I want to be involved in that. And when they get to doing it, like, but they've got jobs and they work as insurance, they're car salesmen, they have a restaurant job, whatever, they do all these other things, right? And it takes a lot of time and effort to get involved in this. You got to commit a lot of time. It's basically like you have to go to work, you have your full-time job, and you got your family, your wife, whatever, you come home and you have to do it. It's like another full-time job doing this. And it you know, I could see where after a while it might wear on people and might be a little tough to keep it up, because like you're doing that, because I've been doing this and I've spent a lot of money and I have worked with people, and there've been times I've felt like I was being treated like a piggy bank, and I've like shelled out money to go to shows. And it's like for you, you don't really get paid a lot, because I don't have a budget, but like I do take you to the show, right? Like,
Yeah.
you are getting something out of this, because you don't have to pay to get in. You get to go to a table and sell your stuff. You don't have to pay for the table, or the amount that you pay is not as much as if you were getting your own booth, right? And like most of the time, all I ask you to do is fix a few things, and
And it becomes that symbiotic relationship of
Right.
And I think that's anyone that's looking to get into this.
Yeah.
Your budgets will be different, and
Mhm.
but for one, even with the statement of like it's not like you haven't paid Tayson.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Well,
the fact
I mean,
of like there's been other stuff.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, with
I've sent him stacks of comics. It's like I actually sent him an entire case of comics one time, so that so that
when he goes to
he can do
shows
the
in
shows,
Canada,
yeah.
it becomes that level of, but that's the kind of point that I'm bringing up is that, there are other things than monetary stuff that
Yeah.
can be done within arrangements.
Well, there's another interesting too. Is like there's a question of how ownership rights are divided up, and one of the things as a creator is a kind of okay, now we're in advice mode, professional advice. So here's the thing: is like there are two ways to get a comic book made. Okay, you barter, or you pay somebody. Okay, and sometimes somebody is willing to just do the work, right? But if somebody is not getting paid, they automatically own a stake in what's being created. Okay, so you are the creator of a comic book. You've written it. You don't know how to draw it. You need an artist. Okay, so artists expect to get paid, which is perfectly fair. You can negotiate. There's a lot of guys. There's always somebody new entering the field with talent. There's also a lot of people that are not any good, and they're more willing to work. But are they going to give you are they going to give the presentation you want? But like the thing is like there are lots of ways to make arrangements with people, but and there are artists that that are willing to, like if they love the project or there's a good deal, that maybe they'll give you a deal. Maybe they'll do it for $25 for only 40. Maybe they usually charge 60. It depends on the arrangement. But the thing is like there's an ownership stake that you're wagering to get this guy's help, which means that if you do get that deal later, okay, let's say you get the deal, like you get picked up by Image, right, or Dark Horse, or you get a cartoon deal. Well, that artist now has a right to be there too, right? And so have good contracts, because people can come back and go, well, you've made $1 million, you owe me money. But there's a thing that,
and with the 21st century, I mean, it's just easy enough of Google. I mean, there are plenty of pre-made PDFs and various things out there, and do not worry about like changing things up to work for yourself. I don't know about you, but like within some of the people I've worked with, where I wouldn't say Sharpie, but basically, certain aspects were changed from whatever the original document was.
Get an editable contract.
Yes.
You codify the terms. You don't codify the legalese.
Yeah.
Like you don't change the legal stuff. You just put the terms in. But it's like the thing is have good contracts. Make sure the ownership of the stuff is very clear. It's probably not a good idea to like base characters on your friends. I have done it, but like you got to be very careful, that you have the, like when you deal with those situations, because unfortunately I, did that with one character, and it turns out the friend is an alcoholic, so that might be a problem one day. And but we all, so we'll see if the gentleman's agreement holds. But like there's another point where something you can do, right, that actually will, like a lot of artists that we've met will agree to these terms. This is very generous, is that usually when an artist gets hired, it's a for hire arrangement, but you could say that you could grant in the contract unlimited reproduction rights, right? So Tayson, for example, makes the Thunderfrog book 2. He's a for hire in the second one, so like, he's, the ownership rights may be a little funny, but he still has a strong stake because he was the original creator, and he donated his work for the first graphic novel, so he is minimum a 30% stakeholder in that book. Okay, minimum, right? I still have the controlling interest, but I know he votes with me, so we're good. But the thing is that like Tayson can take that book, right, and he can reproduce it. He has the right to take that book, upload it to his own printer, make as many copies as he wants at his own expense, and sell them, and knows me not a dime. And I offer that deal to every artist that makes one of my books, right? Because if they want to sell that book, they can take it to the show. It's certainly good for me because they're advertising the product, and
Right.
and that doesn't hurt me. The building the brand is good, and you're not surrendering rights by doing this. You're like going, okay, I own everything, but you can print it and sell it unlimited, like without restriction for the rest of your life. That doesn't violate in any terms. That doesn't hurt you in any way, and it actually treats the artist well, better than there used to be, most likely. And you give them something which is now they can now profit from their work, and that's valuable. And in my experience, like artists will, under those terms, have been willing to work a little less because they can get their money back, that way. I don't know, maybe it becomes complicated if you get picked up by Image and they don't want people being able to do that, but like that's one way you can get your book made, so but make sure that your terms are very clear. I mean, we got very lucky. We found a great guy who's he's not corrupt. Tayson's very much a good team player. He's enthusiastic. He gets it, and he feels invested. And that's what you want. But you won't always have that. Sometimes you guys have a guy who's just for hire.
Yeah.
He's just a hired gun. And he's good, and he's willing to work, and he's professional. But you still have to be able to afford him. And there are ways to do that. Make sure up front you explain your situation. It's like if you're operating on a budget, the guys are like, well, what's your budget? And you go, okay, well, here's my budget. Here's my proposal. This is what I'm offering to you. And it's either good enough or it isn't. And if it isn't, then you find somebody else.
Yeah.
To be very upfront.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's like within the various projects that we've done together, it's like we've had other individuals where it's like, no, it just for whatever reason just doesn't work.
Yeah, and
timing
also,
or monetary or otherwise.
And as we've kind of mentioned, like we've also met guys that are jerks, and you know what? If the guy has a bad first impression, it's not worth working with for him. We're working with this person, And I've had that. I've had a couple times when I didn't stick with that first impression, and it ultimately didn't work out. Fortunately, the projects usually don't get very far. But it's like if you have a bad first impression, walk away. They're nobody's gonna be offended. Like, I think I want to go a different direction, and that's all you gotta say. I had one guy. He sent me. He sent me I wanted to see samples of work. So the picture he sent me was a picture of gay sex, and it's like, is this the way you should?
And well, in content, it was just it wasn't the direction that you were even looking.
No, but is that even like an appropriate way to like get a job? I mean, it's like wow, Anyways, I think we should probably a good time to call it a day on the video. We're getting funny looks from Shannon over there. So I guess thank you very much for getting this far, and we'll see you in the next issue.
Bye.